all creation through bomb and form. The greatest to ever do it like Kareem in the form. Or Dame at the buzzer, Skip at the rucker. 96 Bulls, the GOAT, there's no other. Bulls and Goats get some wins, but never cover. The word gave the answer to sin. No stuff.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Behind the Plays podcast. I am not Davion. Unfortunately, you guys are stuck with me again for one more week, which I know is devastating, I'm sure. So I would hate to be stuck with me for one more week. But here we are with the Behind the Plays podcast. We are talking some Week 5 NFL football, recapping Week 5, and we're going to make some predictions for Week 6 as well. Another super quick one, just like last time, because there's not a ton to talk about. I'm mostly just going to recap the games from Week 5, talk about what's going to happen Week 6, what to expect there. No need to fear, though. Davion will be returning next week, so you have normal podcast back up to date happening next week. So, before we get started, if you are new to the Behind the Plays podcast, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscription button, that follow button, whatever platform you are using to listen/watch the Behind the Plays podcast. We would really appreciate your support to keep getting Behind the Plays content out weekly during football season. Davion does some basketball stuff during basketball season. All kinds of fun stuff happening over here at Behind the Plays. So, let's very quickly just run through the Week 5 NFL games, kind of give some general insight into these games, and make some predictions for Week 6. So, Week 5, we started on Thursday Night Football, which was primed to be a stinker, honestly. We got Bears in Washington playing the Commanders. Bears do end up getting a huge road win, 40-20. Bears' first win of the season. We were down to only one winless team left, being the Panthers, because they did lose to the Lions this week. But the Bears got their first win on the road against the Washington Commanders. And honestly, this Bears offense looked like the Bears offense from the first half of their Broncos game. So I think in hindsight, we probably should have expected this to happen. But it was difficult to imagine the Bears winning a game until they actually won a game. Now that the Bears have won a game, I think that they could ride some of that momentum heading into next week when they play the Vikings, which will be a huge divisional matchup for them as well. So let's look at some stats with the Bears-Commanders game very quickly, because this is probably one of Justin Fields' most prolific passing days. 15-29 for 282 and 4 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns going to DJ Moore. A lot of fantasy games were over right at about halftime on Thursday night. Because that's really all the Bears needed was DJ Moore. If you started DJ Moore, congratulations to you and your fantasy win. That was pretty much decided by about 7 o'clock PST over here on the West Coast. I don't think the Commanders had a horrible day. Sam Howell went 37-51 for 388, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So not a terrible day for them. I think the Bears honestly just kind of outplayed them, which was a huge shocking upset and a huge road upset for the Bears as well. So that was Thursday Night Football. Sunday morning, like the crack of dawn kind of Sunday morning, we did have the first time in NFL history a team playing back-to-back London games. The Jaguars this time are technically the away team. They are playing the Buffalo Bills. Bills coming in on a 3-game win streak do find a skid here in London as the Jaguars do defeat them 25-20. Solid game from both ends. This is one of the games I caught the tail end of because I slept in this Sunday. I didn't watch I didn't get up on time to watch the Toy Story game. But I did catch the second half of this game. And it was honestly a pretty fun game. Josh Allen had a crazy good day too. 27-43, 59, 2 touchdowns and a pick, as well as 1 touchdown rushing too on 4 carries and 14 yards. And honestly, this came down to a huge day by Travis Etienne in particular. 26 carries for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Jaguars as they escape London, having gone into them 1-2 and now are out 3-2 and back on top of the AFC South, having the head-to-head with the other 3-2 team there being the Colts. And those two teams actually do happen to play each other again already this week, Week 6. That'll be a huge matchup to probably play a big part in deciding the AFC South this year, as it seems like the Jaguars, Colts, and maybe even the Texans are kind of a little bit of a 3-headed race for this title here. So a huge game for the Jaguars and a huge win against the very, very red-hot Bills. Bills are on Sunday Night Football this week playing against the Giants, so hopefully that'll be a big bounce-back game for them. They need to do their best to stay on top of the Dolphins, who are now 4-1. So technically, the Dolphins are leading the division, but the Bears do have, or not the Bears, the Bills have the head-to-head against them. So that'll be a nice little tiebreaker for them if they need it so far. Sunday morning proper, we have a handful of games. We're going to start off with the big one, the blowout in New England. The Saints ended up smoking the Patriots 34-0. Patriots have put up 3 points in the last 2 weeks and have their defense has allowed, quick maths, 74 points, 72 points in the past 2 games, which obviously is not something you expect from a prolific coach like Bill Belichick. Mac Jones did end up getting benched after throwing 2 picks, 12 completions on 22 attempts for only 110 yards and 2 picks. The Saints had a really big day offensively, a really big day defensively, and the Patriots honestly just could not get anything done. I think we're genuinely considering the Patriots kind of blowing up operations a little bit, and kind of the feeling coming out of Foxborough lately. There is possibility. I believe the Patriots, I think, have like the number 5 pick right now, give or take, in the NFL draft. So that's a decent position to possibly make some moves and go get a quarterback if you're really not trusting Mac Jones in your position. I've seen a lot of rumors of Mac Jones to the Falcons, which I don't hate that move for the Falcons. I don't hate that move for the Patriots. But if Mac Jones continues to play this way, there's possibly time to consider putting Bailey Zappi in long term and possibly moving on from Mac Jones during the end of the season. Saints get a huge road win after a pretty significant loss to the Buccaneers last week, and this keeps them alive in the race for the NFC South. The Saints are 3-2 and technically half a game behind of the Bucks because the Bucks were on bye this week and didn't play a game. Both are at 3 wins, but the Bucks have only lost 1 game, whereas the Saints have lost 2. Them and the Falcons are both 3-2. The Panthers are no real contenders right now. They're sitting at a very not so comfortable 0-5. But the NFC South is getting to be a pretty tight race between the Saints, Falcons, and Buccaneers. So every win counts, and this is a huge win for them on the road. We have an AFC South divisional matchup next, the Titans and the Colts. Colts end up winning 23-16 in a very close game, honestly. I think the big news coming out of this is the injury to Anthony Richardson. Let's see if we can figure out long term what that looks like. It is a AC joint sprain, and he will probably be out a month. So Gardner Minshew, for at least the next handful of weeks, is going to be the leading man in Indianapolis, and that is certainly not exactly optimal for them. Their upcoming schedule, this week they're in Jacksonville, which is obviously probably the most important game on the Colts schedule left, because I think the Jaguars right now are the team to beat in the South. And if they can't, then that's not really a good position for the Colts, given that they already have one loss to the Jaguars this year. And then they're at home against Cleveland, who lately has not been much of a pushover. At home against New Orleans, who just shut out the Patriots. Then they're in Carolina, so hopefully that could be a pretty decent bounce back game. And then Thursday Night Football against the Chicago Bears. So slated right now, the Colts are on week 11 bye. It's decently realistic that maybe Anthony Richardson comes back week 10 for the Patriots game in Germany. But more realistically, we could see a situation where maybe they just sit him out till week 12, where they're at home against the Bucks, and that certainly is shaping up to be a game where they will need Anthony Richardson. So Colts do escape with a win, but escape without their starting rookie quarterback for at least a few weeks, which is very unfortunate for them. Titans, I think, are kind of turning out, unfortunately, after being one of the better teams in the NFL for the past 5 to 6 years, are turning out to be one of the more average teams in the NFL lately. It feels like they're just kind of missing on some draft picks. They're missing on some free agencies and things like that. DeAndre Hopkins was probably one of the best acquisitions the Titans could have made, but it seems like Ryan Tannehill is on his way out of the NFL. And I love Ryan Tannehill, and I love the huge comeback story he had in Tennessee after his lackluster career in Miami. But it's about time to move on and possibly consider Malik Willis for late this year, maybe into next year, or even Will Levis for late this year into next year. If the Titans draft a rookie quarterback in the draft, I think that's a huge step back for them, given that they've spent, I think, third round. I think Will Levis was a second rounder and Malik Willis was a third rounder, the last 2 drafts drafting quarterbacks. So if you try to get one of these big headliner quarterbacks out of the draft, like Caleb Williams, like Drake May, like The guy at Oregon is it Bo Nix, I think, is going out for the draft and things like that. I think that's going to be a huge step back for the Titans. So I don't really see that happening, and I think they need to figure out their situation. Ultimately, I believe Derrick Henry's also slated to be a free agent next year, so we could see complete implosion in Tennessee, but we'll see ultimately long term how that goes. Next on our docket is an AFC North divisional matchup. These are always fun. We have the Ravens and the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Steelers do escape with a huge fourth quarter comeback, winning 17-10, the most unorthodox fourth quarter of all time. I know that much. I know that it says they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter, but I think that came off of like a safety and like two field goals, like some kind of whack combination like that. I think the big thing to notice out of the Ravens right now is their receivers are really letting um, Lamar Jackson down. I believe Odell Beckham was sidelined. I think he has an injury. I don't think it's a tremendous injury. Yes, they are expected to play. No, they were expected to play on Sunday. Yes, that's what it was. Odell Beckham Jr. had missed some time, but was expected to play last week. Did he have any catches? He did. He had two catches for 13 yards. There were a lot of like super key drops by the Ravens receivers that we saw. There was that huge one that probably could have been a huge touchdown, possibly even just worst case scenario, a big game by Nelson Aguilar, who I am just now learning is actually on the Ravens. I didn't know he was still in the NFL. Um, that play by Zay Flowers where T.J. Watt, it seemed like it knocked it out or at least spooked Zay Flowers enough to drop the ball. And it seems like there's some issues with the receiving core out of Baltimore, which has kind of been the case in Baltimore for the last long time, as long as Lamar Jackson has been there. Their best receiver technically has probably been Mark Andrews at tight end, but outside of him, their best receiver, you think about receivers in Baltimore, and there's not a ton that come to mind, at least as Lamar Jackson has been there. It's been really their rushing attack and their defense, and then Mark Andrews when he needs to be there that have really set the stage for Baltimore. So we wanted to see them make a huge splash in free agency, and they tried to with Odell Beckham, and that really so far hasn't worked out a tremendous amount. So we could possibly see the Ravens making a big move for this a wide receiver come draft time. But right now, this is not the time to consider that because the Ravens are very much so still in the race for the AFC North, even after losing this game to the Steelers. I believe they're a wild card team right now, and they're only a game behind the Steelers because they lost this game in particular. Based on what we've seen in the first 5 weeks, I think overall the Ravens are the best team out of the North. Given that the Bengals have started off so slow, the Steelers are so hit or miss, and the Browns have been kind of hit or miss too. They've been hot a little bit lately, but especially with the possibility of Deshaun Watson not playing in Cleveland, I think the Ravens are in the best position to steal the North. They just got to start winning some key games to do that. The good news for the Ravens is that they knocked off all three of their away divisional matchups in the first 5 weeks. They played in Cincinnati, they played in Pittsburgh, and they played in Cleveland, and ended up going 1-2 out of those. So that's not the worst record you could have had coming out of that. But the rest of their divisional games are all going to be at home, which is a huge boon for the Ravens as well. Okay, next up was the Lions and Panthers. Lions ended up scoring 42 points, tied with the 49ers for most points scored this weekend, and ended up beating the Panthers 42-24. Out of all the teams that lost this weekend, the Panthers did put up 24 points, which is the most out of any team that lost this weekend. So that's decently optimistic for them. We had the return of Bryce Young, who had struggled for the most part, went 25 of 41, 247, three touchdowns, but did throw two really important interceptions. Whereas Jared Goff went 20 of 28, 236, three touchdowns, three and a touchdown on the ground, plus one from David Montgomery and one from Craig Reynolds as well. This was a pretty huge game for the Lions as well, having such a tight race or such a blowout race against the Packers last time. I don't know why I said tight race. I think I was thinking of the Chiefs game where they barely won on the road. But having such a big win and getting the long break and coming back and beating the Panthers this what bad is important for them. I think the Lions have kind of proved that they're definitely one of the contenders out of the NFC. We thought they were going to be an average team and probably a playoff team, but honestly wasn't really anything all that exciting. But I think the Lions really are contenders to possibly win a divisional matchup, even win, possibly go to the NFC Championship game, maybe win it and go to the Super Bowl. I think that's a little bit of a long shot at this point, given that the Eagles are still undefeated, the 49ers are still undefeated, and the 49ers are like crazy good, kind of undefeated too. So we could possibly see a decent stretch out of the Lions late, but they've surpassed my expectations so far, and I'm really excited for that because the Lions have been historically terrible. So it's really exciting to see them be good to decent finally for once. Panthers continue to drop. They are now 0-5. There's a lot of drama coming out of the Carolina organization right now with their owner possibly playing a little bit too close to the Panthers. There was some rumors that the Panthers really wanted to draft C.J. Stroud, where the Texans ended up drafting him second overall, but instead their owner forced them to take Bryce Young first overall, which I don't know how true those rumors are. I think Bryce Young will pan out to be a fine quarterback once he gets some time and uh, conditioning, but C.J. Stroud in Houston has been hugely exciting and hugely successful for him so far. So that could possibly be a reason we ultimately see the Panthers' downfall. My boy Corby was back, so that was exciting. But yeah, let's talk a little Texans and Falcons then. Speaking of the NFC South, Falcons do end up winning 21-19, a huge win, coming back from London, coming off a two-game losing streak, and beating one of the hotter teams in the NFL right now. Was huge for the Falcons. They definitely needed to win this game. Definitely a big upset, I think. Even though the Texans were on the road, I think a lot of people, myself included, were really expecting the Texans to come out on top here. Desmond Ridder, 28 of 37, 329, and a touchdown. Also had one on the ground as well. Bijan Robinson, one of the more exciting players in the NFL, had a pretty decent day. He did have one touchdown receiving, 14 carries, 46 yards rushing. So a pretty decent day out of them. C.J. Stroud still has not thrown a pick though. So even though the Texans are now 2-3, I think, still has yet to throw a pick this season, which is insanely impressive, and I hope he continues that as long as possible. I think both of these teams are honestly average to good. We could possibly see the Texans and the Falcons maybe knocking on the door of the wild card game. We'll see. Honestly, it was just an overall pretty exciting game from both teams. Really solid game. Less solid game was the Dolphins shellacking of the Giants. Dolphins won 31-16. I think a lot of people expected this. The Giants had that massive comeback win week 2 against the Cardinals. Outside of that, have not really done anything else. Yeah, I believe Dolphins, Tua, 22 of 30, 308, 2 touchdowns but 2 picks. Devon Achane, 11 carries, 151 yards and a touchdown, and Raheem Mostert, 10 carries, 65 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, 8 receptions, 181 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Waddle, 5 receptions, 35 yards and a touchdown. Like, the Dolphins' offense is just so crazy loaded. Unfortunately, Devon Achane, I believe, is slated to possibly go on to IR. He's dealing with a knee injury. So that's kind of a huge blow for them. But I think long term, we could possibly see the Dolphins rising to be one of the better teams, which is so strange because the AFC East has been wild ever since the Patriots' downfall. You know, the Patriots were the best team in the NFL for the better part of 20 years. And now that the Patriots are not, there's kind of a weird void that was filled by the Bills for a long time, and a lot of people thought that the Bills were going to fall down and that the Jets were going to succeed them, and then the Jets are now not that great, even though they beat the Broncos. We'll talk about that later. And it really kind of feels like the Dolphins are now filling this void. So that's really exciting out of the AFC East, that I think it's kind of keeping everybody on their toes. Bengals beat the Cardinals 34-20, and this, I think, was the huge breakout game a lot of Bengals fans and a lot of NFL fans were waiting for. Joe Burrow finally seemed like he finally got it going. 6 of 46, 317, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Those 3 touchdowns going to Jamar Chase, who had 15 receptions on 192 yards. What can you say? He's always open. Of course, he had 15 catches and 3 touchdowns. This was finally, I think, the game that the Bengals needed to really start making their comeback. The Bengals were slated to be one of the better teams out of the AFC this year, and then were honestly really disappointing to start the year. This was the Bengals that I think we were used to the last couple of years. Cardinals are not an excellent team. And I think that this is important for the Bengals to win and win big on the road too. So we possibly could see, I think right now the Ravens are the best team in the AFC North, but if the Bengals continue to play like this and the Ravens continue to skid with their receiving issues, we could possibly see the Bengals make a huge comeback and steal the AFC North right out of Pittsburgh, right out of Baltimore, right out of Cleveland. My friend Davion will be very happy to know that the Eagles beat the Rams 23-14. Eagles stay undefeated. Pretty good matchup on the road and pretty important matchup. I believe Davion said a couple of times that this was a quote trap match, a trap game that the Eagles could possibly end up losing. And I could have seen a situation where they do. I think the Rams are better than they're letting off to be. The big one coming out of LA this time is that Cooper Kupp is finally back from IR, who had 8 receptions on 118 yards. Their rookie Puka Nacua, 7 receptions, 71 yards and a touchdown. So a lot of people thought that Puka's fantasy production would go down, given that Cooper Kupp is now back. That did not really seem to be the case at all. And I think the Rams honestly played a decent game, and the Eagles played a pretty decent game too. This was just overall like a decently tough matchup for both teams. I think both these teams are still solid. The Rams are in a decent position, I think, to still make a wild card if they can get scoop up some wins. And of course, the Eagles are still undefeated. There is one other team that is still undefeated, which is being the 49ers in addition to the Eagles. Right now, it feels like the 49ers are overall better than the Eagles, but I think the Eagles are still one of the top contenders out of the NFC right now, probably in the best position possible to win the East, given that the Giants aren't great, the Commanders are really struggling, and the Cowboys are so hit or miss. They're winning big against the Patriots, 38-3, and then this week they lost by 32 points to the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. So the Eagles, I think, if they continue this pattern, they will be on the rise. If they can come out of their first 6 weeks 6-0, that'll be huge for them because they have a tough tail end of the schedule. Week 7+ is where the Eagles' schedule really starts to take off, starting with Sunday Night Football against Miami, and then they're in Washington, home against the Cowboys, and then they get their bye week. But then they're in Kansas City, home against Buffalo, home against San Francisco, in Dallas, in Seattle. Where are they on this list? Home against the Giants, home against the Cardinals, and then in New York to end their season. So they have a pretty decent like week 16, 17, 18, but everything like week 17 to 15 is a real struggle for them. They get their bye week, but every other week they're playing a contender team for sure. So the Eagles coming out of this 6-0 would be huge for them, and I think it's possible that they do, given that they're playing the Jets, and the Jets aren't excellent, but they are better than the Broncos. The Jets beat the Broncos 31-21. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I could say about my god awful Broncos. They continue to disappoint me. Their defense lets me down every time. Their offense has really been struggling lately. There are rumors of a fire sale happening in Denver, and honestly, I could see it. We need future talent. We As much as I love so many players on the Broncos, it makes a lot of sense to ship off somebody like Justin Simmons. It makes a lot of sense to ship off somebody like Jerry Jeudy. It makes a lot of sense to ship off somebody like Cortland Sutton. It makes a lot of sense to ship off somebody like Randy Gregory, who they did end up shipping off to the 49ers just to swap picks, get a sixth for their seventh in Randy Gregory. So I could really see a fire sale happening in Denver before the trade deadline. If the Broncos want to be long-term successful, I think they really got to start building from the start. I think you pretty for the most part got to blow this whole damn thing up, I think. So we could see it potentially coming out of Denver. Jets get a huge bounce back game. Didn't play great, but quarterback, or at least Zach Wilson didn't play excellent. 19-26, 199 yards and a touch or in a pick, and that's enough to win the game for sure. When Breece Hall is able to carry the ball 22 times for 177 yards and a touchdown, his first game back, really, I think he's been back, but I think he's been on a snap count. This is the first week that they took him off that snap count, and look how it went for them. So, yeah, big win for the Jets, big loss for the Broncos. Who cares? Besides me, of course. Our last Sunday afternoon game, though, another AFC West team, this time the Chiefs, were in Minnesota, do pick up the road win 27-20. Vikings, I think, are kind of in panic mode right now, especially now that Justin Jefferson officially hit IR today. He will miss at least the next 4 weeks. Kirk Cousins is slotted to be a free agent next year. And we could possibly see a complete reset in Minnesota too, just like we could see one in Denver. Patrick Mahomes, 31 of 41, 281 yards, 2 touchdowns as well. I think the conspiracy theories are getting more and more and more crazy here because there was the situation late in the game with the Chiefs and the Vikings, and there was a Chiefs player who got flagged for some penalty. I think it was pass interference. I don't remember. Took off his helmet in the middle of the field to complain to the refs, which is a penalty. You cannot take your helmet off in the field of play and should have been flagged for it. Ended up not being flagged. They ended up waving off the penalty flag too, claiming that the ball was tipped. I didn't really see that replay at all, so I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, the conspiracy theories get deeper and deeper and deeper, and I think it doesn't help that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL right now. I think in the last few years are probably the best team in the NFL. Maybe not this year given that the 49ers are so good, but are a top 3 team in the NFL this year and have been a top 1 team in the NFL since Patrick Mahomes started in Kansas City. And we saw a lot of these very similar stories happening to the Patriots when they were excelling with Tom Brady and with Bill Belichick in the early 2000s and then the 2010s as well. So I think it could just be a lot of hoopla, but it doesn't help their case, that's for sure. Chiefs do end up playing the Broncos here on Thursday Night Football, and then at home against LA. Then they're in Denver, and then they're in Germany against Miami. So I don't realistically see like a tough matchup for the Chiefs until week 9. So we could realistically see at that point 7-1 Chiefs going into Germany to play Miami, and that'll be an intense game for sure. Um, okay, and that takes us to Sunday Night Football, where the 49ers had a very, very, very impressive win, 42 to 10 over the Cowboys. I will say one person who has been very impressive so far from the 49ers, other than like the obvious one, which is Christian McCaffrey. I think one person who's been extraordinarily impressive is Brock Purdy. A lot of people saw him, and myself included, as more of like a game manager quarterback. The 49ers have an incredible receiving duo in Debo and Brandon Ayuk, have a top 3, probably top 1 defense, have Christian McCaffrey, who is one of the more exciting and more dynamic running backs in the NFL, have an excellent top 10 O-line, and Brock Purdy honestly just needed to be there and not screw up. But honestly, he's been really performing well. 17 to 24, 252, and 4 touchdowns. Like, these are the numbers that we saw Jimmy G put up when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl a handful of years ago. It's not like he was ultra impressive in those games that they won, but he did enough, and Brock Purdy is doing enough, and he's honestly pretty successful at it. We finally saw the breakout game for George Kittle this season. 3 receptions, all 3 of them touchdowns for 67 yards. Cowboys looked so unimpressive, and I think right now are so hit or miss and very unpredictable. Like I said, they beat the Patriots by 35 points the week before. Then they lost to the 49ers by 32 points. The week before, they lost to the Cardinals by 12 points. And then the week before, they beat the Jets by 20. It doesn't feel ultra consistent out of Dallas. They beat the Giants by 40. I think they're either losing big or they're winning big, and we honestly need to figure out what's going on in Dallas. They have a huge Monday night matchup this week against the LA Chargers, and then they go on bye week. So we could possibly see a little bit of like a soft reset for the Cowboys and trying to figure out that situation there. Monday night football. The Raiders ended up beating the Packers 17 to 13 in a duel of incompetency. The Raiders and the Packers both did not look ultra impressive. Jimmy Garoppolo, 22 of 31, 208, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Jordan Love, 16 of 30, 182, and 3 picks. So not too great coming out of the Packers. And honestly, the Raiders didn't look tremendously excellent either. I think maybe the Packers were on a little bit of a high weeks 2 and 3 after that huge win against, or weeks 1 through 3, I should say. A huge win against the Chicago Bears, a pretty tough loss against the Falcons, and then a huge comeback win against New Orleans, and I've honestly been super flat since. Good news for Green Bay is they're on a bye week this week. I hope they get a little bit of a soft reset. They do play the Broncos immediately after, so that's hypothetically a winnable game. They play the Vikings the week after that. That's hypothetically a winnable game. So we could see a little bit of a soft reset out of Green Bay. If they want to contend for the NFC North, the team to beat right now is the Lions, and they proved last week that they couldn't. They get another shot at them on Thanksgiving. We'll see. Okay, Browns, Bucks, Chargers, and Seahawks were on bye. So that is all 14 of our games this week for pick'ems. Myself and Davion only had 2 games difference. I won both of them. I ended up going 8-6. Davion ended up going the ever so frightening 6-8. Did have a losing record this week. I'm sorry, Davion. I just crunched the numbers. Don't shoot the messenger. But I predicted the Saints to win, and Davion predicted the Patriots to win. They did not. And then what was the other one we had different? Oh, and I had the Bengals winning, and Davion had the Cardinals winning. So another huge win for that as well. Again, I do have Davion's picks as well for the upcoming week 6. We start on Thursday Night Football in the AFC West. The Chiefs are hosting the Broncos. The Chiefs are good. The Broncos are not. We're going with Kansas City. I think this kind of feels like a no-duh thing. Um, and if the Broncos win, I have like a personal dub going for me. The Broncos have not beaten the Chiefs since week 2 of 2015, where they went on to win the Super Bowl. I remember watching that game. It was, I think, Sunday night, maybe Monday night. Huge play at the end of the game, Bradley Roby scoring and all that fun stuff. Yeah, that was the last time that the Broncos beat the Chiefs, was when Peyton Manning was their quarterback, and now he's ancient. So, yeah, probably not. Right now, it's hard to believe the Chiefs are going to lose, especially to a god awful team like the Broncos. So I have the Chiefs winning. Davion agrees, also has the Chiefs winning. Sunday morning, we have one more London game this year. This time it's the Ravens and the Titans. Both of these teams, I think, are a little bit desperate for a win. The Ravens are coming in 3-2. The Titans are coming in 2-3. I think we've seen so many struggles out of the Titans and so many struggles out of the Ravens in a foreign field. You know, you got to kind of soft reset here. This isn't really a home game for either team, as the Ravens and the Titans are both kind of in a position where they can't really afford to lose. The Titans go on bye, the Ravens don't. They have to come back and play the Lions, and then they have to come immediately after that go into Arizona and play the Cardinals at home against Seattle. So the Ravens have a very, very, very tough schedule, and I think for their sake, they need to win this game. I'm picking the Ravens to win. Davion agrees, is also picking the Ravens. Okay, Sunday morning proper, we have. Let me, if I just scan real quick. Probably game of the week. Honestly, in my opinion, Lions Bucks, which is the weirdest thing to say. Like, I think the other contenders are like Saints Texans is big, but not an excellent game. Cowboys Chargers Monday Night Football, I guess, maybe. Yeah, I think that the game of the week is Lions Bucks, weirdly enough. Lions on the road in Tampa. This is a huge, 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 huge game. Lions coming in 3-1, Bucks coming in, or Lions coming in 4-1, Bucks coming in 3-1, having bye last week. I think if both these teams want to stay on top of their divisions, these are must-win games for both of these teams. The Saints are and the Falcons are right on the Bucks' heels, and I don't think the Lions are completely safe either from the Packers, from the Vikings, or even the Bears here. So this is our first different game this week. Davion's going to go with the Lions on the road, and I understand why. The Lions are hot right now. I have a hard time believing the Lions are going to lose a game. But all logic tells me the Bucks are going to win this game because it's A, in Tampa, and B, the Bucks are coming off of a bye week. So I think those two factors together leads me in the direction of Tampa. So Davion's going to go with Detroit. I'm going to go with Tampa to win this game. Okay, we have Panthers at Dolphins next. I mean, come on, this feels like a no-brainer. Panthers haven't won a game yet. Dolphins are one of the better teams in the NFL. I'm picking Miami. Davion agrees is also picking Miami. We have New Orleans at Houston, which I think is a really fun game, weirdly enough, as well, because the Saints have been like averagely bad and the Texans have been like averagely good. But the Saints do have a game right now on the Texans, but it's in Houston. So I think this is just an overall really fun matchup. I am going to go with the home team in this one. I think the Texans are a little bit thirsty for a win after a big loss to the Falcons. I'm going to go with Houston. Davion agrees is also going to go with Houston. We have Commanders at Falcons. Commanders did not look very impressive in that game against the Bears. Falcons coming off a huge win against the Houston Texans. Falcons are at home. It's in Atlanta this time. Davion's picking the Falcons, and I, for the first time in a while, am going to pick the Falcons, which means the Commanders will probably win the game. But I'm officially taking the Falcons. And hopefully this breaks the curse. If the Falcons lose, I'm never picking the Falcons again. Don't care. Like I'm betting on you one time to beat the not very good Commanders. Please come through for me this one time. We have an AFC South divisional matchup, a rematch already. This time in Jacksonville as they're hosting the Colts. This is a huge game for the ultimate outcome of the AFC South, I think, because statistically right now, these are the top two teams in the AFC South. The fact that Anthony Richardson is out is not a great look for the Colts, and I have a hard time believing they're going to be the Jaguars, who are coming off of two huge games in London. I'm going with Jacksonville. Davion agrees is also going to take the Jaguars. We have a pretty big matchup here in Cincinnati as they are hosting the Seattle Seahawks. Bengals coming off a really needed and really important win against the Cardinals. Seahawks coming off a bye. So the fact that it's in Cincinnati, I think, is what's making this game a little bit more competitive. And that, I think, was enough for Davion to take the Bengals. I am going to disagree this time. I think the Seahawks coming off a bye and the Bengals being a little bit too inconsistent. I personally think it's a little too risky. I'm going to go with Seattle on the road to win this game. We have an NFC North divisional matchup. Vikings and Bears. Bears coming off the long week and a huge win against the Commanders. Vikings coming off a game in which the Chiefs cheated. I'm joking. Laugh, please. It's in Chicago. Chicago is on the long week too, and honestly looks super impressive against Washington. Vikings are going to be without Justin Jefferson, and I think that's going to be a huge detriment to their team. So Davion is going with Minnesota. He did send me these picks this morning, Tuesday morning, and I believe Justin Jefferson was officially placed on IR Tuesday afternoon. So I don't know if his opinion has changed, but as of right now, he's going with Minnesota. I'm going to go with Chicago to win this game. Next up, we have 49ers at Browns. 49ers are probably the best team in the NFL, but the Browns are at home and coming off a bye. That was personally enough for the Buccaneers to beat the Lions. For me, that's not going to be the case this time. The 49ers are crazy good. The 49ers are crazy hot. I'm going to go with San Francisco to win this game. Davion agrees, is also taking the 49ers. Next up, we have Patriots at Raiders. Another duel of incompetency. The Patriots 1-4, the Raiders 2-3. Feels like the Raiders are not as good as 2-3 though. They could have very easily lost the Broncos week 1 and very easily could have lost the Packers last week. The Patriots very easily could have lost their one game that they won against the Jets too. We realistically could see a matchup of 0-5 in another universe here. But out of these two not very good teams, the one who feels less not very good, in my opinion, is Vegas. So it's in Vegas too, and I think that helps. I'm going with the Raiders to win this game. Davion agrees, is also taking the Raiders. We have an NFC West matchup here. Cardinals at Rams. Rams are in desperate need of a win if they want to stay competitive for the wild card. Given that San Francisco is as good as they are, and given that Seattle, I think, is honestly pretty good too. They're playing the Cardinals, who I don't think are an excellent team and are not going to make a huge splash here. I'm going with LA to win this one at home. Davion agrees, is also going with the Rams. And then lastly, for Sunday afternoon, we have Eagles-Jets. Let's go Birds. The Eagles, that is, not the metal birds, the Jets. I could really use a little revenge game. The Bills were doing that for me for the long time, and now the Bills have to, they have to fly their own. They are a peacock. We got to let them fly. But I'd be pretty appreciative if the Eagles could beat down the Jets for me. So I'm going with the Eagles. They're 5-0. The Jets aren't very good. I don't care if it's on the road. I'm going with the Eagles. Davion agrees, is also going with the Eagles. Of course he is. And that takes us to Sunday Night Football. We have the New York Giants playing in New York. In Buffalo, New York, that is. Bills are hosting the Giants. Bills are coming off a pretty tough loss in London against the Jaguars, but overall I think are a pretty solid team. Giants are not. So I'm going with Buffalo to win at home. Davion agrees, is also taking the Bills. Which takes us to Monday Night Football. We have Cowboys, we have Chargers, we have SoFi Stadium, Los Angeles, California. I think it's actually in Irvine, California or something. Oh, it doesn't matter. Chargers are coming off a bye and get the extra long week too. The fact that they're playing on Monday Night Football, which is huge for them. Cowboys are coming off a very tough loss against the San Francisco 49ers. It's on the road for the Cowboys, and I don't think the Cowboys are an atrociously horrible team, and logically speaking, they should bounce back this game if their pattern continues. But again, in LA. Chargers are off a bye week. I have a hard time picking against that unless it was something like the 49ers. I think the Cowboys are vulnerable. So I think reluctantly. So I'm going to pick the Chargers to win this game. Davion disagrees, is going to go with the Cowboys to win this game. We have two teams on bye this week, just the Packers and the Steelers. Both of them are due back next week. Where next week we get our first bye-mageddon. So fantasy football people, make sure you're paying attention to your lineups next week because week 7 is officially bye-mageddon. But that is it for our week 6 predictions. I'm going to very quickly run through them. Davion is taking the Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, Dolphins, Texans, Falcons, Jaguars, Bengals, Vikings, Niners, Raiders, Rams, Eagles, Bills, and Cowboys. I am taking the Chiefs, Ravens, Buccaneers, Dolphins, Texans, Falcons, Jaguars, Seahawks, Bears, 49ers, Raiders, Rams, Eagles, Bills, and Chargers this week. So, another relatively short one. Again, Davion will be back next week, so we get all that friendly banter back. Don't worry about a thing, little you. That's going to be it for the Behind the Plays podcast. So, if you enjoyed, once again, a like, a subscription, a follow, whatever platform you are using to listen or watch the Behind the Plays podcast. I know Davion will really appreciate it, and I would appreciate it enough. Just enough. So, if you could give us a like, you give us a subscription and a follow, that would be much appreciated. From the Behind the Plays podcast, I have been your official host, today at least. But next week I go back to being the official co-host of the Behind the Plays podcast. It's been a pleasure going solo. The sequel, so next time we will have the full Behind the Plays podcast crew, all two of us back at it. So we appreciate you guys watching, listening. Take care of yourselves. See ya.